My name is Craig Picken. I'm an executive recruiter. More than a decade ago, I started my practice for one purpose: to use my experience as a former military aviator, business jet sales executive, and P&L leader to help aviation and aerospace companies and their executives be fast, adaptable, and strategic. I do these podcasts to inspire and inform, but more importantly, they are a focused platform to help business leaders grow. Welcome to the Aerospace Executive Podcast. So welcome back to the Aerospace Executive Podcast from Shanghai. I'm thrilled to have David Yu on with me. David is he's a professor at New York University in Shanghai. He's he's a very accomplished aviation finance expert. Not only does he teach finance at NYU, but he started his career at Lehman Brothers and Merrill Lynch, and then was a vice president and head of China and Asia for what became LCI Aviation. What'd you do, David? A couple $1 billion with aircraft deals with LCI?
Yeah, that's right. And I was actually head of Asia for the parent group. Actually, so there was some other real asset classes involved there as well.
Okay, great. We'll talk about that. And now you are the founder of the first aviation valuation and advisory firm in China and Asia. And as we were talking about before we hit record, you're doing a lot. You're busy. You're a busy guy right now.
Yeah, that's right. Look, there's only about 20 senior ISTAT appraisers worldwide, and most of them are in the U.S. or they're in Europe. And so I'm the only one in North Asia and in China. And really, over the years, there's really no valuation advisory company who are based out here for Asia. They've all been still based in Europe, U.S. and Europe. And I felt that there was a need for this, so I set this up last year to basically look after this opportunity. So I'm the chairman of the company.
I got you. And so what's keeping you busy right now? Obviously a lot of drama in the commercial aircraft industry last 6 months, probably a little bit longer over in China. What's keeping you busy?
Yeah, no. One of the major topics that's been keeping me very busy is I would call it almost emergency surgery, in that everyone, both lessor side and airline side, has been really looking at their portfolios and trying to find ways to optimize that. And what I mean by optimize is, on the lessor side, is figure out if there's airlines who need rent holidays or deferrals or other restructurings. There's plenty of that going around. And let me come back to that point in one second. The airline side is mostly trying to figure out ways to conserve costs, negotiate with their lessors and financiers and their debt restructurings. So that's been keeping me busy as well. To the last point I was saying about the lessor side, what we've been seeing is that now we've pretty much hit almost the first wave of the rent deferrals. So 3 months have pretty much come up for a lot of folks. So the question is, will there be a second round of lease deferrals, or is there some other directions? While that seems dramatic, there is some good points where there are airlines who have now restarted to repay. So it's not all airlines who will. And this is definitely something to keep on tabs of going forward, and keeping me pretty busy, along with, of course, associated valuations and other activities.
So, word on the street in the U.S. press, and Asia aviation is starting to bounce back a little bit. Is it out of the woods? Can we be a little bit? Can we be more optimistic about what's happening with the major airlines in China?
So I think that question. I think overall, I would say there has been a bounce back, but it's not. It's really a bifurcated story. A story of two parts. Right. First part is the international, and that's still in the doldrums. Right. Pretty much, it's still in the mid-teens in terms of capacity versus last year in 2019. But if you look at domestic markets in China, domestically in China, and the major countries in Asia as well, that means really, and domestically, that's okay. It seems to be okay. But load factor wise, I think that is slightly different, country to country. In China, it's been pretty decent actually. Load factors there, it's about 70% or so. So it's actually quite good, and it's recovered fast. Even some airlines have actually seen passenger carried numbers that are better, that have caught up to last year. So this is just literally hot off the press a couple days ago.
So a little bump,
that to me is quite good. Yeah, the passengers carried were better than is on par to last year. So they have come back in that sense. A couple of the private airlines, Spring and the low cost carrier, and a small regional carrier, Huaxia Airlines, in the West. So they have actually done very, very well. So from the bounce back domestically speaking.
Yeah, international is going to be, look, until the borders open up, international is going to be the governments are going to be the wild card. So my sense is that
no one wants to quarantine.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be first or second quarter 2021, my guess, before anybody sees any reality in the international arena.
Yeah, no, I hope at this point it's closer at this point, end of the year at the very earliest to reopening in a meaningful way. So yeah, no, let's hope there's some magic bullets in this vaccine that people have been optimistic about in the press.
So look, so the airlines, it's obvious obviously the airlines are just hold on to cash right now, and they're doing everything they can to stop the bleeding. What do the leasing companies need to do? What's happening in the finance world, and what are the leasing companies? What's the best path for them to get to the other side?
Well, I think on the leasing company side, it's also a case of how do we conserve cash in the sense that if their revenues are basically their rent income from the airlines are partly stopped or deferred, that's going to create pressures on their financing, right? Because all the aircraft are pretty generally financed. The question is, how flexible are the financing on the back end? So we've seen basically lots of restructurings of existing debt facilities to basically try to accommodate for these deferrals. And the banks are if it's commercial banks, senior secured banks, basically seeing that they've been reasonable and showing some flexibility on that side. What gets tough is actually these more structured credit capital markets type deals where there is tons of shareholders and note holders. So it's very hard to get consensus. So that very difficult to get approvals for any type of restructuring. So I don't see anything meaningful coming out of that. So in that sense, and also there's divergent actually basically incentives for the various classes of who wants what. So that's going to be still something to work out. But look, most folks have some sort of overlaying facilities. The question now is, can we move past this kind of hemorrhaging and moving forward in terms of growth rather than just focusing on the on hemorrhaging the downside or risk mitigating.
So I got a call from a guy the other day, and he's like, he's loaded up on inventory and it's all levered. And he's like, my bank is going to call it. And my answer to him was, look, your bank can make you liquidate, but it's kind of stupid to liquidate into what's really a frozen market. It's your inventory is only worth what somebody is willing to pay for it. And there's really no, you can't appraise it. It's only values what the next guy's willing to pay for it. How many scenarios are those out there where the structured creditors want to send things to liquidation with no market on the other end?
Well, at the moment, and those cases that I've seen have been on the low side. People have been, like I said, have been more flexible, and rather than very, very ironclad in upholding their rights. So that's why you see a lot of the debt restructurings. But you're absolutely right in the sense that, if there's forced type of NASL, you're not going to get the value that you thought you were going to get. That's for sure. There's going to be distressed pricing. And in this market, the question is, even if you do, so where do you place those aircraft, even if you do take sides?
As a senior appraiser, how do you put a value on a 777 that is sitting in a desert right now, and may or may not have a home down the road? A lot of wide bodies. Boeing right now is running out of storage space for the 787s. How do you value that stuff, or even try to?
Well, look, I think from my point of view, is a question. The first question is, do I think this aircraft type is it a temporary blip, or is this an ongoing blip? I think this is one of the biggest questions, and there's a divergent of views on this topic, right? In my opinion, the old technology aircraft will basically depreciate much faster than what was anticipated, given what's going on. And this is not a temporary fix for them. And that, on the flip side, the new current technology, new technology will definitely come back up. I think that for them, it's a much more temporary blip. So these are kind of some of the things that you got to consider. But look, we look at our past models, we look at trends, and we look at kind of how things have affected over other economic shocks. That's what I've looked at. And at AVA and Kava, our valuation company, what we do is we look at a lot of actually new analytical tools, so machine learning and other techniques to look at ways to model this out on other more non-traditional methods to see kind of where things could happen. So this is some of the things that we run these things through that I think is pretty unique for our industry.
A lot of new money came into the leasing arena. A lot of private equity, a lot of new leasing companies came in. Obviously, you got your behemoths out there, Bank of China, AirCap. Are we going to see a serious consolidation in the leasing arena, or do you think that will the big guys acquire the little guys? Will the little guys just go away and liquidate? What's your sense there?
Well, I think for industry-wide, there's definitely going to be some restructuring. I think for now, folks have been, like I said, there's been finding ways to figure things out, be in trouble. I've been saying that I think that this is currently really in the third inning in baseball terminology of what the entire game will be. It'll take a while for this to come up. We haven't seen really too many forced sellings or Chapter 11, et cetera, restructuring filings, and rightly so. People have been deferring and have some cushion, but that's slowly easing off. And if you look at it, same goes with the airlines themselves, right? They've been held up well with a lot of the the money that the government subsidies and aid, but that's coming up to for an end too. People for employment, et cetera. So when that kind of runs out, then we're really going to hit the next stage of this crisis. But really, it's the next step towards a recovery. That's the best.
Yeah, well, yeah, I look at like American, they're bleeding, 40, numbers I hear, American, Delta, they're bleeding $40 million a day. That's $1 billion to a month. And, you can only do that so long. Do the governments, you look across Europe, you look across Asia, you look across the United States, does the government just need to come in and backstop these guys until they don't need to be backstopped anymore? Or is it all of a sudden going to become more of a shareholder problem for businesses that were really pretty well run?
Well, look, I think that's a great question. And I think the question for me is, one, if from a government point of view, there is some sort of there's definitely arguments for aid, and then this opposite side of that argument is if we do that, then who's next?
Right.
And who as in which other industry is next? And you can't pick winners and losers on that side. But at the same time, that my logical question is, if there is sort of refiling, basically, if there is some sort of restructuring that is done, then are there people willing to come in and step up to basically make this more efficient? And if that's the answer, then I would say let the markets do its thing, and why use public money from that point? It should be backstop should be in a sense where there will be very little ways to have it resurrect in another form. I think that's when it would really is needed.
Yeah, look, there's a ton of private equity money on the sidelines right now, but I got to think that a lot of them are going, hell no, I'm not investing in an airline after what I've just seen. How does the industry rebuild itself off of this?
Yeah, no, that might be the general consensus, but I'm sure there is a few folks out there with significant firepower who are interested in airlines still and in all this. And you could see that actually in the latest bidding of Virgin Australia, right, where you had the two PE players as the final bidders for that airline. But at the end of the day, it always takes one. But one thing to keep in mind is that this is natural, right? The faster there is restructuring, there is ways out into more growth areas. If we keep holding back, this will never get to the next stage, and it'll really just be kind of keep pressing away. So I think this is a healthy way for the economy to kind of move on.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, everybody's going to be able to get cheap airplanes, dirt cheap airplanes, dirt cheap capital. I mean, money can be had at next to nothing. So, you're right. Maybe it is a total rebuilding process. How do you see it? How do you see it all playing out? I mean, aviation's a pretty resilient. We've been very resilient, past a couple other crises. Do you think this one passes us by, or is this one from what you're seeing in China? Is this something that is really going to change the game?
No, I think, look, aviation, like you said, is really resilient, and I believe that. So I just wrote my upcoming book, Aircraft Valuation, Airplane Investments as an Asset Class, is coming out in October by Paul Great McMillan. And in the book, I look at the different crises. I did a 20-year study of aircraft over 20 years, and looking at past basically exogenous shocks like financial crisis, et cetera. And you really do see a lag in this. But at the end of the day, you see that it does come back. And actually in other kind of health effects, if you look at SARS, it was pretty much a V-shaped recovery, right? And if you look at in certain cases today, I would say in domestic markets, a lot of markets, it's actually very, very similar. Basically, and that 1970s still is. It's compared against other ones. Well, if you want to have a longer read, you can read the book. The preface is actually, the preface section talking about this was just published by KPMG, KPMG Ireland. So if folks wants to read that, they can find that. So I'm a external thought leader for them on the space.
So your advice to you're a known expert out there. You've got component MRO, you've got aircraft MRO, you have the entire supply chain, and right now everybody's holding their head down and thinking, this will never pass. You're fairly optimistic, though, it sounds like.
Look, I am optimistic for the medium and long run. Short term, there's going to be a lot of pain. Don't get me wrong. I have to say, in all types of crises, if you look back in the last 20 years, up to even the 70s, there is lots of pain, short-term pain. But what the resilience factor is, we will get through this as an industry. But things will change and people will change. So I actually think there will be definitely restructurings to come. That's for sure. And that hasn't really started from a wholesale point of view. Again, that's why my analogy of third inning. We're not even in the middle yet.
We're not even in the middle yet. Oh my gosh, yeah. So, but let's talk about it from a different aspect. Aircraft values are going to go down on the floor. Financing's cheap. Let's talk about the people component. A lot of pilots are gonna get furloughed, and you can't just. It's not really easy to turn on the lights when you've turned them off. When you furlough all your pilots, you're talking about bringing them back. Training and getting them typed again, etc. You've got A&P mechanics or aircraft engineers around the world, and their skills transfer to other industries. They may not come back. How do we get through that standpoint?
No, there's going to be, this is going to cause shortages going forward when the recovery does come back. That's what you see is basically this. So for a while, there was a lot of glut of pilots, et cetera, right? But in the last 10 years, we've seen actually a very big shortage of air pilots, right? Because there was a lot of growth in the industry and not many people coming in. So this kind of will continue to exacerbate going forward. But you're right. People will go, these skills, they will go to other industries. The question is how fast well, there's going to be a big concerted effort to get more people in this space. That's for sure. So after this is creating basically thoughts in people's minds that are not as positive. So you're right. This is a big issue that will concern the industry going forward in terms of people and human capital, for sure.
Where does commercial aviation go? Does it favor more of the low cost carriers and the ULCCs, or does it become more of a premium priced product? Because supply and demand, at least for the short term, is a little out of whack.
For now, the pricing, whichever, is all very, very low, right? Yes. So I've seen the fair numbers, but at the end of the day, right now, I would say the key point is to get back up to capacity. I think that the low cost carriers will probably do a little better than the full service carriers. But at the same time, I think going forward, whether there'll be some enacted policy changes that will affect things, not quite sure. I, for one, am not a big proponent of this holding off the middle seat scenario. I just think that's it sounds great, but it seems very, very uneconomical, and it doesn't make much sense from that point of view. So things to go.
I know. Like the leave open the middle seat. What about the Boeing Airbus rivalry? I mean, Boeing is, Boeing is got sucker punched with the Max. Airbus was banging it on all cylinders with the A320. who's the stronger player moving forward? I mean, you could sit there and yeah, the obvious answer to me would be Airbus is the stronger player moving forward. But is there do we start to split it right down the middle again?
Well, look, I think Boeing has its issues, right, with overall the max overhang, and as well as, of course, the other components, right, of what's been going on. But look, at the moment, new aircraft development has pretty much slowed to a pace to conserve cash. And then the question is, what about the whole supply chain? If you shut down the supply chain, how fast can you actually get them to reinvest and go back up? And that's a big critical question in my mind. But look, I think the rivalry between Boeing and Airbus has actually been great for both sides. Yeah. And why I think that is they push both parties to be the best they can be and make it better than they probably would be if they were just by itself, right? As a monopolistic case. And other points, yes, Airbus is not obviously not as encumbered by some of these problems, but they also have facing the same problems as all manufacturers do today, which is basically airlines don't want to take aircraft; they want to defer them, et cetera. And there's overhang on that side. And and then the question is, how do you finance these planes? I think that's a big question that if you think about it historically, US XM was one, but they're slowly coming back, but they're not at the same levels that they were before. And then in past recoveries, ECAs, and of course the customer finance, the internal financings were a big part in previous downturns. Questions: are they in a position to support their own products, given their own financial states? And they've all both said that they're going to lay off people and downsize, which respective to the order delivery books. I think that makes sense. But how is this a temporary? It goes back to my original question: is this temporary, or is this a longer term restructuring of the companies? Mm-hmm. Because that will affect how many planes and supply that we'll get into. And that goes back to even on the valuation side of how these things will be affected. But the slowdown has actually helped the values, right? There's not much delivery of new aircraft coming out.
Right. Well, that's the thing that bothers me the most is, it's more of this, it's less Boeing and Airbus, but it's more your tier 2, tier 3 suppliers. Your tier 1s are hurting. If you think your tier 1s are hurting, your tier 2s and tier 3s are really hurting. And it's not like you can go requalify a supplier, in a week or a month or even a year. It's pretty difficult to get that expertise back once it leaves the supply chain.
Right, absolutely. That lag period is that restructuring of the industry. That's going to have major ramifications going forward for new lines and basically the well-being. Efficiency aspects. So this is definitely an area to watch out for sure.
So have airplanes been a good investment for people over the years?
Look, long term, they've been fine. I think the question to me is always what's your time horizon? I think that's always been a big question. And number two is and that's actually what the analysis I do is, if you look at aircraft as an asset class and you put it in a portfolio with your other real assets or other benchmarks, how do you create optimal portfolios? And this is an interesting question, but this does help the portfolios. And I think this is something that people really have to think about. Is it's not just, hey, we're in this aviation world, we only think about aviation, but really, what is it compared to other asset classes? How can you use it to make your overall better, your balanced portfolio better? And I think that's kind of their approach that I've always taken as well.
So I was at ISTAT, I don't know, last year or the year before, and a Wall Street Journal reporter came up and asked me if we were in a bubble. And I think I kind of looked at him. I said, if you're asking me the question, we probably are. Were we in a bubble in 2018 and 2019 as far as aircraft and engines and parts values, or was it just a natural high?
Well, look, I have to say it's definitely a high compared to where we are today. Values have all fallen. That's a fact. And the question I would say whether it's a bubble or not, I think really comes down to we were in a period of unprecedented low interest rate environment and therefore cheap cash, right? As we've been talking about. And this has really kind of pumped up not only our aviation values, but also all fixed income values. If you look at it, all the real assets values have come up and returns have come down, yields have come down. So this is all across the board. It's not just in our industry. So do you call this a bubble or is this just a person? So is it a relative high? Definitely. Definitely. But whether, I think with some more time lag, we can actually kind of see whether dynamics work. It goes down to if the underlying dynamics do support these prices, that's all, of course, a good thing. My biggest concern over the years is really have pricing went up so high and yields have come down where you have very, very little margin of error, right? Where you're not getting the risk-adjusted returns that are helpful in order to mitigate some of these shocks that invariably happen in our industry. So that's kind of the biggest question, and we see that with COVID, right? That's a big.
I think we're going to be in a very high or a very low interest rate, negative low interest rate environment for a while, and I think that's going to pump up, between real estate and real asset values. That's going to be, I think that's going to be the ongoing question mark. Moving forward, I think we'll just have to, kind of have to wait and see how it all plays out.
Yeah, no, it's still the lag effect still continues. So I don't think it's fully reflected yet. And according to my research, it's usually about a year to 2 years worth of lag between these crises to really get down to a more stabilized figure. So we haven't hit that time frame yet.
So if we're in the third inning, does innings 4, 5, and 6 come before right around the New Year's time with 7, 8, 9? Are we back on a good path in the second quarter of 2021, or we got a little longer than that? You think? What's your crystal ball say?
I think that's about right? If by the end of this year, Q4, there should be, at that point, a lot of the government aid has run out, and then the question is, will it get elongated? That's actually at the end is a magic question about timing, right? Will there be more government aid that will come in? Because if there is, that will elongate this projection, right? If not, if it runs out as anticipated or as people could think, then that's about right. I would say by end of the year that will start the ball rolling. Q1 it will flush out, and hopefully by Q2 we move on. We can move on from there. But at the moment, I think the biggest question is there going to be a vaccine anytime soon? Which it's not going to come out next day, next month. It's going to take at least half a year at minimum, And then the question is there more government aid that's going to come in that will elongate these projections?
I guess the jury's out. So we'll have to wait and see. Hey, thanks for coming on. I know it's early over there in Shanghai.
No problem.
Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. It was good to have this chat, and I hope to do it again soon.
Let's plan on doing it again. Let's see where we're at. Towards the end of the year, you can give us an update on kind of what you're seeing over in Asia and China, and where we all go from here.
Okay. No, that sounds good.
Thanks for coming on, Dave. I hope you enjoyed the latest edition of the Aerospace Executive Podcast. You can reach out to me directly, Craig at NorthstarESG.com. or check us out at www.northstaresg.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, or on YouTube. Just do a search for Aerospace Executive Podcast. Thanks again. I'm Craig Piven.